Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Bible Basics with Pastor Steve. Thank you all for being here tonight. Got some folks saying hi already. Stella, good evening, Stella. Good evening, John. Good to have you here with us. Go ahead and say hi in the comments, or in the comments or the chat or whatever, whichever platform you're using to watch. Say hi, whichever way you can say it. Tonight we're in the second week of our wisdom unit. There's going to be 4, so this is week 2 of 4. Good evening, Cindy, and good evening, friends. Yes, and tonight we're talking about the wisdom of friendship. Hello, Vargos, Jean, and down yes, down in Southern Maryland. My ring light has been acting finicky lately. Welcome, everyone, and tonight I lost my place already. Tonight, we're talking about the wisdom of friendship. Second week of 4 weeks, we're talking about wisdom. Maybe more, depending. I think I talked last week about maybe we'll go into Ecclesiastes after this and then to Job. That would take us to 6 weeks that we would spend. And I, I don't know how I would do Job, but we'll jump off of that bridge when we get to it. All right. So let's go ahead and start with a word of prayer, shall we? Gracious God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable in your sight, for you alone are my rock and my redeemer. Amen. So once again, this week I took some Proverbs and sort of reworked them in more modern language. Not a paraphrasing, because I tried to find modern sayings or idioms that roughly aligned with the ones that were in Proverbs, because those were, common phrases that made sense back then that we just don't use anymore. So here we go. And I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different Proverbs for you. I hope you had a chance to read them already. Greetings, Charles. Proverbs 3, verse 3. Cherish loyalty and faithfulness. Wear them on your sleeve. Write them on your heart. Proverbs 11:13. A gossip will betray you, but a true friend can keep a secret. Proverbs 12:26. A righteous friend will guide you well, but a wicked friend will lead you astray. Uh-oh, I'm having buffering issues here. I think we're okay now. Okay. Proverbs 17:9. Loving people forgive their friends, but those who hold grudges lose them. Proverbs 18:24. If you have a lot of friends, you can't count on any of them. One true friend is better than a brother. Proverbs 27:17. Iron sharpens iron, and a friend sharpens a friend. All right, now we're going to go through those. We're going to go through them mostly in order. I put them here in the order in which they appear in the book of Proverbs, but I'm going to move one of them because 2 of them really go together really well. So, as we said last week, these are short, wise sayings that are designed to teach kids and young people how to behave as an adult. So they're not just pragmatic. They are very pragmatic, but they're not just pragmatic because they're not value neutral. A wise person is a righteous person. A foolish person is a wicked person. And part of that is that the Proverbs make their decisions on right behavior based on a certain set of values. So there are things. So tonight we're talking about friendship. There are things that you should value in a friend, and things that you should not value in a friend, and things that you should actively avoid in a friend. There are some things in there that are neutral. So then, what are the Proverbs trying to tell us about friendship? Well, they're telling us what to look for in a friend, how to choose a friend, how to be a good friend to the friends you have, how to sustain friendships over the long haul, and what it means to be called by God to friendship. And all of those things are kind of intermingled in the stuff we're going to look at tonight. So there's a folk proverb that says, a friend, you might have seen this on a bumper sticker or on a t-shirt, a friend will help you move. A best friend will help you move a body. And that's actually kind of biblical. I mean, not in those specific words, but it that that rings true to what they're saying here. So let's look at these here. Okay, so the first one was from Proverbs 3. Cherish loyalty and faithfulness, wear them on your sleeve, write them on your heart. Loyalty, faithfulness. You know, the Hebrew word that is used for love in the Proverbs is the unconditional, forgiving love that is not generally used to describe actual people. So it is used in the book of Proverbs, but in the narrative, the only time it's ever used to describe a person is the love between Jonathan and David. Proverbs says that's the ideal that we should be striving for in all of our relationships. So faithfulness, loyalty, what does that mean? Um, for one thing, I think it means we stick up for each other. But another thing is just when you make relationships are defined by the promises that are made. And of course, a lot of promises in a friendship are not made out loud. They're kind of unspoken promises. You know, in a marriage relationship, they're out loud. But in friendship relationships, they're usually not out loud. But to the degree that they are, especially, they need to be honored. So, for example, one of the biggest complaints I hear from young people these days about the state of friendship in our culture is that they can make plans to do something with a friend weeks in advance. You know, weeks in advance, we'll say, put this on your calendar. And their friend will say, all right, it's on my calendar. You really have no idea whether or not that event's actually going to happen because, you know, right up to the day of the event, they might call and say, hey, I'm going to do this other thing instead, which is basically saying, yeah, I was looking forward to doing this thing with you, but somebody else offered me something better. So I'm going to ditch you and do that thing instead. That's a problem with a lot of modern friendships that that this verse is addressing. That's not how friendships are supposed to work. If you tell a friend you're going to spend time with them to do something, you're supposed to honor that promise, regardless of whether or not you get a better offer to go do something else. Loyalty and faithfulness in friendships matter. That's something that we should look for, something that we should strive for, look for in others, and strive to do ourselves. The next one from 11, a gossip will betray you, but a true friend can keep a secret. Confidentiality, very important value in friendships. Most people are really bad at keeping secrets, which is why you want to be careful who you share secrets with. And you might have a real close relationship with somebody who's really bad at keeping secrets, and that's going to be an issue. I remember a guy I used to know who retired from Army intelligence, and I was talking to him about conspiracy theory, and he shut me down and he said, "Steve, conspiracy theories never pan out." He said, "None of them are true." He said, "We know about all the actual conspiracies. And the reason we know about them is because a conspiracy requires thousands of people to keep a secret, and very few people actually can. The more people that are involved in the so-called conspiracy, the less likely it is. You know, so the worst things that have happened, and we found out about, usually not too long after they happened, because most people can't keep a secret. Well, the people that you want in your inner circle, you know, your best friends, you know, if you can't trust them, you need to make some decisions about what you're willing to share with them. Confidentiality is a value. And that means that we should endeavor to keep those confidences. We should do a talk one night about why people don't keep confidences. What is it that, what, there's got to be some base flaw that drives people to break confidentiality? What are the motives people have in doing that? We'll talk about that sometime. Proverbs 12:26. A righteous friend will guide you well, but a wicked friend will lead you astray. So this one is about influence. And the last one is about influence as well. Iron sharpens iron, and a friend sharpens a friend. So we're going to take both of those together. Um, I remember a folk proverb that my sixth grade teacher used to tell. I remember so much of the things that woman, so many of the things that woman said because she was a former nun turned charismatic evangelical, and she had this real toxic brand of judgmental Christianity. And I was a practicing Christian even then, and I had a lot of conflict with a lot of the things that she said. And one of them was, "Tell me who your friends are, and I'll tell you who you are," which is saying that you will be judged by the company that you keep. And another folk proverb that's similar to that is a much older one by Ben Franklin that says, "If you lie down with dogs, you'll rise up with fleas." I know that that's a very popular way of looking at things, but it's not biblical. Okay. Um, Proverbs assumes that people have different levels of wisdom and different levels of virtue, and that those people will hang out with each other. What Proverbs is concerned about is the direction that the influence is flowing. So, in other words, Proverbs assumes that I'm going to hang out with people who are more foolish than me, and who are less virtuous than me, but also that I'm going to be hanging out with people who are a lot wiser than me and a lot more virtuous than me. So the concern is that positive influence is flowing in the right direction, so that I'll be exerting a positive influence over my foolish friends, that I will not let them lead me astray, and that they will not try to lead me astray, and that I will not try to lead my wiser friends astray, but follow in their footsteps as well. So that's the concern there. So if there's a person that's continually trying to get you to do the wrong thing, somebody who's exercising bad influence over you, that doesn't necessarily make them a bad person, but it makes them a bad friend. If they know that what they're doing is wrong and they're trying to recruit you to go along with it, then they're not looking out for your best interests. The next one is about forgiveness. Obviously, a value in our tradition, right? Loving people forgive their friends, but those who hold grudges lose them. In other words, lose their friends. Holding grudges, and the text talks about bringing things up over and over again after bringing things up from the past anew. And I was reading this today, thinking about a couple that I know, a married couple, and their marriage has had some ups and downs. They've been together a very long time, and when they were younger, like a lot of younger people, they I shouldn't say that. This isn't a young person thing. I know a lot of young people that are not like this at all. They were kind of immature and selfish, and they everything was always kind of win lose for them. So if they were going to try and figure out where to go on vacation, it wasn't a matter of trying to figure out where they both want to go. It was, where do you want to go and where do I want to go, and which one of us is going to win. When holidays came around, it wasn't a matter of where would we like to spend our holidays, what would be the best meals for which families, and so forth. If we go to my family for the holiday, I win. If we go to your family, I lose, you win. And they sort of kept score, because there was never any compromise. It was always win or lose. They kept score, not on paper or anything, but when you approach the world like that, subconsciously you keep score. And they've reached a place where they're still together. but they both sort of how they talk about relationship accounts or ledgers. You want to invest in your relationship so you don't find yourself in the red. Both of them would describe the other as being in the red. They have won so many times, and I have lost so many times that there is no way they're ever going to dig out this debt that they've got to me. Both of them view it that way. Okay, and it's really sad because they're not the same people now that they were back then. They're a lot less self-centered now. They're a lot more giving and gracious now. And I don't see them um, doing the same kinds of self-centered things now that they did then. So in other words, they're not adding to the debt anymore. They've finally figured out how to coexist, but there's still this sort of bitterness over the past. And if they could just let that go and wipe out all that old debt and not think about the indignities of the past anymore, they could have a really nice life together going forward that they would both really enjoy. Um, and so they've changed a lot already. So I'm hoping that they will change and they'll be able to erase the debt and move forward. Um, I hope that they'll be able to do that. That would be another change that would have to be made. So the forgiveness is like that, washing the slate clean, forgetting about the things of the past. So what's the next one? If you have the next one and the last one, I guess I should say. Um, if you have a lot of friends, you can't count on any of them. One true friend is better than a brother. I looked at a lot of different translations to get to the bottom of this proverb because some proverbs are worded very differently in different translations, so differently that it changes the meanings of the proverbs in dramatic ways. And I think I've gotten to the bottom of this one. A lot of people who are much wiser than me disagree, though. So who knows? Let's call this a valid interpretation. And if you have a lot of friends, you can't count on any of them. One good friend. This is about the difference between good friends versus acquaintances. And I think we all know people who would say, "Hey, I've got a lot of friends." And you look at their circle of friends and you think, well, they've got a lot of people they're friendly with and on good terms with, but those are really more acquaintances. How many actual good friends do these people have? So, most people have a village of about 100 people. That's how many people you can know. And by know, I mean you look at their face, you remember their name, you remember where they're from, you know who their family is, where they work. You might not talk to them every day or even every week, but they're your people. Okay, they're people you keep up with. They're people that you care about. They care about you. Most people have about 100 of those people. Or I take it back. The average person can manage up to 100. If you try to expand your village beyond 100, you're going to start losing people. You're going to forget people. You're not going to be able to keep people straight. Um, that's just the way it works. And it is for that reason that most churches max out at about 100 people. Now, I know you look at the news and you see all these giant churches, but they're not the historic norm. In this country, the average church has about 70 people on any given Sunday morning. That's always been normal. The reason we panic about it now is because we've gotten used to having a professional class of well-educated clergy, and 70 people cannot pay a full-time salary to somebody in that category. Um, so that's the way American religion is changing. But 100 people is about the size of a village. Now, churches that have that grow beyond that, usually they've got multiple services of 100-ish people each, and each of those services is its own village. And there's just a little bit of crossover between them, and that's all well and good. That is absolutely fine. I know people think, oh, well, that's like it's, now that we're in different services, it's like we're not the same church anymore. Well, you could be one church and go back to being 100 people again, because that would be the alternative. If you combine if you had two services of 100 people and you combine them together into one, you're going to end up with one service of 100 people, not 200, because you're going to lose 50 off of each end as they sort of don't gel into the new village. Right. So that's how villages work. Now, these mega churches that have thousands and thousands of people in them, they've got, they don't all, they're not all real churches. Some of them, it's really like going to the movies once a week. But the ones that have actual functioning congregations, there are villages that are functioning within that congregation, but the villages are not a worship feature. They're something else. Anyway, okay, so the 100 people, that's your village. Those are the people you're friendly with. Those are your acquaintances. Your family is much smaller, like around 6 people. Okay, and the way Proverbs talks about a friend is basically an adopted family member, right? Because it says they're closer than a brother. A good friend is closer than a brother. So you've got this a much smaller circle, you know, 5 to 10 people who are your inner circle, your core group. Hello, Debbie. Glad to have you even late. And a good friend is one of those people. A lot of people, if you have those 6, you don't need the other 100, really. Um, you still kind of do, and I'll say why in a minute. Because those 6 are the ones that you're actually going to count on. Those are the ones that are going to help you move the body, right? The other 95, they're not going to help you move the body. Okay, they're going to turn you in. So you want those 5 that are going to help you move the body. It's important to know the difference. It's important to know which ones you can really count on, and to have those people, to nurture those relationships, people you can really count on. And of course, not just because you're going to benefit from it, but because you need to be a good friend to 5 people as well. So a lot of people have the 100 and they think they've got everything they need, even though they don't have the 6, and that's not true. There are also people who have the 6 but don't have the 100. And that's a problem too, because what's the best way to put the people are mortal, okay? And people die. And and of course, these rings sort of overlap. So you might have a group of 6 people, but one of the you know, let's say there's you and your wife. You've got your 6 people, and your wife is one of them. Okay, and your wife's got 6 people, and you're one of them. But her other 4 might not be your other 4, right? So what you have sometimes it happens. Hello, Barbara. As people move later into life, if they don't have that village, as people die, the village gets small, or that little ring of family gets small, and then your life starts to get small. So your group of 6 needs to exist within a larger group of 100, partly because um, the 6 are not going to stay permanent forever. Even the 12 disciples, we think, if you look at the list of disciples in the different gospels, they're not the same. And one of the interpretations of that is that it wasn't a fixed group. It might have been fixed at any given moment, but over time, not so much. And then, of course, in Acts, Judas had to be replaced. So this your family needs to exist within the context of your village. All of your close friends started off in your village, right? So if you don't have the 6, probably good to have a village before you start trying to build your 6. And once again, that's a very loose number. I'm just saying. I'm in a family of 6, right? Husband, wife, and 4 kids. Half a dozen. It's just a nice, neat round number. It's a flexible number. So at any rate, so you need to have your village, and you need to have your family, and your family needs to be part of a village. A family that isn't part of a village is not going to be on a good foundation. It's not going to be stable. So how do you get friends, right? How do you get a village? Um, because it this doesn't tell you where to meet them or how to establish those relationships. It's all critical information you need to know. There are modern books written on that topic, though, and I'm going to go ahead and recommend three books to you: two about how to make friends, and the third about how to build a village. So the first one, and it sounds like a cliche, you're gonna have to go, Steve. You're really gonna recommend that book? That's the one that people joke about. Yes, I'm going to recommend "How to Make Friends and Influence People" by Dale Carnegie. It's an excellent book. And when John Maxwell also has one called "Winning with People," and I think I read that one first, and that was a good book. And he recommended reading this. I thought, oh, John, really? You're gonna recommend that book? But then I went ahead and I read it, and it's a good book. Um, and it's now published by Dale Carnegie is long gone, but it new editions still come out. His foundation or whatever it's called owns the rights to the book, and every few years they update it. Um, Taking out some of the stories that don't really work anymore, that people wouldn't understand anymore because the book is so old. Um, some of the scenarios, just people wouldn't know what it's about anymore, or just don't seem realistic anymore. They've put new ones in and updated the language as well. So if you're going to read it, you want to get a new edition of it because they really have changed a lot over time. So, How to Make Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, and How to Winning with People by John Maxwell. John Maxwell, of course, is actually, he's a retired pastor who writes books mostly on leadership. A lot of his stuff stated now. That one isn't. I don't think it is. Both of those books are going to give you an expanded treatise on a basic concept, which is that if you want to make friends with somebody, you need to make them feel interesting. And you do that by showing interest in that person and actually being interested. It's not about putting on a show or acting a certain way. If you want to be friends with somebody, you need to get them talking about themselves and listen and be interested and care. And if you're listening and you're not caring, then all right, well then maybe this person isn't going to be a friend of yours. Find somebody else that you are interested in. But if you're interested in them, make it show that you're interested in them, and ask them all those questions. You know, where'd you meet your wife? Where were you born? Did you have you had a whole career in this field, or did you change? All those questions that help you get to know. That's how you make friends with somebody. Now, once again, your friends come from that village, right? So, how do you build a village in the modern world where villages are not defined by geography anymore? And that's where the other book comes in. It's called How to Work a Room by Susan Rowan. And I think John Maxwell was the one that recommended that book as well. But it's a good book. It's funny. There is some stuff in it that I would not recommend, particularly for getting people liquored up when you want their lips to loosen up. I wouldn't recommend that necessarily. The writer's father was a salesman, and she had an epic story about how he would go to the bar and order orange juice and rounds of Harvey Wallbangers for everybody else, and everybody thought he was drinking Harvey Wallbangers, but he was drinking straight orange juice. He was getting everybody drunk, getting trade secrets from them while he was perfectly sharp. That's not ethical. It's funny, but it's not ethical. No, the book is written for people who, when they walk into a room full of people they don't know, they immediately feel uncomfortable. How do you get to know people in a room full of people you don't know? Um, if you're not somebody who naturally does it, and there are people who naturally do that, and there are most of us, or at least half of the world is does not thrive in that kind of a setting. Those of you who know me well know that I do not thrive in a room full of people that I don't know. Those of you, well, in recent years, I've gotten better at it. Those of you from Walkersville probably remember that I didn't make the best impression when I first arrived in the fellowship hall in 2002 or 2003, whatever it was, because I was probably, oh, I know I was visibly uncomfortable. And It's an ugly look. People interpret it as being standoffish, judgmental, lots of different things, when really it's just discomfort. So what do you do when you're one of those people? Well, when you're the pastor, you got to make the rounds and talk to everybody. You need to find a way to be comfortable doing that, and the book is helpful for that. And there's other books helpful for that too. But most people, when they walk into a room full of people they don't know, they don't need to meet everybody in that room. They just need to find somebody to talk to. And the secret is to look around the room and find somebody else who looks like they're as uncomfortable as you are. Okay. And walk up to that person, and you just have to be a slight bit more comfortable to initiate the conversation with the other person who's very uncomfortable. And the reason you do that is because those of us who are uncomfortable in those scenarios, we're just wishing somebody would talk to us so we wouldn't have to have the burden of initiation. So what you're doing is when you see somebody as uncomfortable as you are and you walk up and you introduce yourself, you're giving that person a gift. You're blessing that person with, oh, thank goodness there's somebody here to talk to, and I don't just have to stand here um, stirring my coffee with my finger for the next hour, wishing the floor would just swallow me up. Usually, when you introduce yourself to somebody like that, they're going to be so grateful that somebody spoke to them that they will immediately say, "Oh, this is my new best friend for the next hour," and they'll start talking to you, and then you get to engage the 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 conversation tricks that other people have recommended. So I recommend doing that because you need that. The book's about networking, but your network really is your village, and people need a village. Um, Everybody needs a village. And I have not yet finished Hillbilly Elegy, but I've been reading other stuff that comment on um, the differences between different socioeconomic classes and their cultures. Networking is a big part of it, and a lot of people have this notion that only rich people have networks, and that's not true. Um, there's lots of types of networks. Now, yeah, it is the case. My mom tells me about her friend Shelly. Shelly, I think, has retired and moved to Florida. But back in the day, Shelly was a hairdresser, and she was networked with all of Southern Maryland. And she would be sitting there doing somebody's hair, and the person would say, "Oh, my daughter's a senior in college this year, and she's in this field, and she really needs an internship, but she just can't find one." And she'd go, "Oh, really?" And she'd stop doing the woman's hair, and she'd pull out her phone, and she'd call somebody up, and she'd say, "Hey, it's Shelly. Um, hey, do you need any interns in your office this summer?" "You do? Good. Okay, I got somebody I want you to talk to." And she had the phone to the person whose hair she was doing, and just stuff like that happened with her all the time, just because she knew her village, and she knew what everybody in her village did. And when one person needed something, and she knew somebody else had it, she would connect them. That's a good friend there. Okay, so with rich people, it's the doctors and the lawyers and the CPAs and the investment advisors and all that stuff, and they have ways of connecting people with each other. But that happens in every socioeconomic group. Um, uh, I've known churches where you walk into a church and you'd have a very hard time finding something in that church that wasn't built by somebody in that church because the people, they weren't doctors and lawyers, but they were tradespeople. You had carpenters, electricians, plumbers, heating and air conditioning people. You had every kind of trade you could think of, welders. You had all of them in there, and they all were networked and they all knew where to find what they needed. And even in the poorest communities, where if the poor communities have good sense of community, then everybody knows everybody, and they're still able to find people. Oh, I need to move my boat next week, but I don't have a truck that can pull it right now. Oh, but I know somebody who does, or you might know somebody who does, and all those connections kind of happen. In my experience, it's the middle income people who really suck at this. Okay? It's the cubicle dwellers who don't seem to have much of a network and don't seem to understand the need for one. and they spend their whole day in the box looking at the screen, and they've got their 3 or 4 people that they talk to when they get home, and that's the size of their world. And when something goes wrong, they don't have that village to fall back on. And once again, that sounds very self-centered, but you know, once you join that village, people are going to fall back on you too. And if you're a good friend, then they can fall back on you. I remember Rick Warren talking about that once, and he said one Sunday this guy was leaving church, and Rick's shaking hands with everybody on the way out, and this guy says, "I'm leaving the church. I'm never coming back." And Rick said, "Why?" And he said, "Well, I was in the hospital last week, and not a single member of this church called me or sent any cards or checked in on me at all. And that's not the kind of church I want to be in." And he left. And Rick said, and the thing is, I happen to know for a fact that this guy has never sent a card or called or checked in on anybody else when they were sick. They didn't want to be part of a village. They just wanted the benefit of being in a village. And that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about being a part of the village. It's just good for everybody. All right. So that's the wisdom on friendship this week. Um, I went over a little bit, and I'm glad, because I did not find any newsworthy article, religious or otherwise, that I was going to enjoy talking about tonight. I talked to Becky about that dinner, and she said, "Does the news have to be political?" And I said, "Oh no, I prefer it not be political. I try to avoid things that are potentially political. I try to find stuff in the news, stuff in the religious news, things that are going on in the Methodist world or in the larger Christian world or whatever." And I said, "There's always stuff going on. There's always a scandal or another study done on why everybody is losing people, but that's not interesting. That's not something we want to talk about every week." So I didn't find anything I wanted to talk about this week. So that is our lesson for this evening. And next week we're going to be talking about work, wisdom at work. I believe is next week's topic: wisdom at work, the Protestant work ethic, and all that good stuff. And the final week of Proverbs, we'll be talking about family. I've let that bleed into our talk about friendship tonight because they're so closely related, but they are treated differently. They are treated separately in the Proverbs. All right. Don't forget, if you have any questions, please feel free to send them to me via email during the week. If there's questions you don't mind putting your name to, you can always put them in the chat. If you want to argue with me about something, you can do that too. I'm always happy to have a back and forth. And I tell you, this group in particular, if I screw something up, somebody in this group's going to know. So feel free to point that out to me. Every now and then in church, Nicholas will correct me while I'm preaching. If he knows that I have misstated something that is factual and easily verifiable, he will call that out to me from the balcony where he's working in the AV booth, because he knows that I would rather be corrected in the middle of a sermon than have bad information go out of my mouth to the congregation and, of course, to whoever's watching online. So that goes for you guys too. If I say something easily verifiably wrong, please shout it out. All right. Well, that's it for tonight. I'll see you guys in a bit. Well, let's go ahead and have our prayer, shall we? We'll close, as always, with a serenity prayer. God, give me grace to accept with serenity the things that cannot be changed, the courage to change the things which should be changed, and the wisdom to distinguish the one from the other, living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as a pathway to peace, taking, as Jesus did, this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that you will make all things right if I surrender to your will, so that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with you forever in the next. Amen. All right, folks. Thanks again for joining. Hit like, hit share, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I'll see you either in church or online. God bless.